ready when you are, buddy.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll be doing the Pledge of Allegiance, the preamble of the Missouri Constitution, and the invocation in that order. Pledge Allegiance, please stand if you can.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the preamble to the Missouri Constitution. We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness, do establish his Constitution for the better government of the state of Missouri. And Ted, are you going to give the invocation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. Thankful for the rain this evening and excited for the Thanksgiving week. Father, that means that there's a lot to be thankful for in Branson, Missouri, for our board, for our staff, 200 plus employees that serve our citizens and our visitors, and thankful for all that you provide for each one of us. Father, tonight we bring before you this agenda. We invite you in these chambers as discussions are held and decisions are made, that everything be done and to your honor and to your glory. Father, we love you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mayor Akers is unable to attend tonight's meeting. As acting president of the board, I'll be running the meeting, but also will maintain my representation of Ward 1, so I will be voting on all the matters as well as running the meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
King.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
Simmons.
Here.
Akers. Gaines.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This is the public comments section of the Board of Aldermen. At this time, the board will hear the citizens who have signed up for the speaker sheet in the order they are listed above. Do we have any people lined up tonight, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Doug Clark.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Clark.
A couple of things here that I probably have covered before, but I wanted to kind of take in context here what we're doing with the COVID and the lockdowns and the testing again. And we currently have about 230,000 deaths that are attributed to the COVID. And there are some questions as to whether all of the the earmarks that they label people that died from that are all correct number-wise, because they've taken quite a bit of leeway through the CDC and the National Statistics Analysis on how they've decided to label somebody that they thought might have died or had it. So I wanted to give a perspective here on some other diseases we seem to not be paying as much attention to as the COVID. One of them is tuberculosis. 400,000 people a year die of tuberculosis, and we have strains of tuberculosis that are incurable. So, we've had that around a long time, and we're not seem to be as currently worried about that as we are this, and we have a 99% survival rate with the COVID. You're less apt to die from COVID than you are tuberculosis. So that's typically what some numbers are here. There are, in the healthcare system in general, there are errors of 251,000 deaths a year, and that is a combination of different things that can happen. Usually you have about 440,000 deaths that are attributed to hospital systems. It can be medications are wrong, taking off the wrong leg, and numerous things that the hospitals apparently can't get under control completely. If you go in and you have an operation, you're going to maybe be getting a flesh-eating bacteria. So they take quite a bit of care in that. So that's the first thing I'd like to talk about here. And the second thing is how that they are using genetic sequencing on figuring out what this virus is about. They have not isolated this virus that we're talking about that's COVID-19. And if you want to look this up, this is on the CDC volume 26, number 6, June 2020. And in this report here on section genome sequencing, they are saying that they started out with 37 pairs of a coronavirus. It wasn't identified specifically as a coronavirus, and they decided that they got these samples from the PCR test just like they're testing people with a PCR test. And so what they decided to do, they decided with this 37 pair to model the rest of the 30,000 pairs that are in that coronavirus. And that's what they're using as the model for this virus, and it's non-existent as far as what their measuring goes. And it's not the only paper that it tells you that in. There's a lot of publications, primarily in the CDC and the NIH, that tell you this. So, what I'm trying to say here is we've got some vaccines that are coming out here shortly, and the problem with it is you've got the first one that's going to come out. It's probably going to be AstraZeneca. It's like a normal vaccine. You don't have to worry about temperature or anything else with that one. But it only has a supposedly 70% effective rate. But then the next thing you want to do before you take any of these vaccines is you want to look at the vaccine insert on the vial that they're giving you the vaccine from, because it'll tell you all the contradictions and all of the side effects that you can get. And typically in 13.1 in that fold out that you can ask for, it'll tell you it's never been tested for mutagenic, carcinogenic, or effects on fertility. The main reason it says that is because there's a liability factor with these vaccines, and they have to tell you what's going to happen to you if you take that voluntarily. You're voluntarily saying that you know that you're going to have that, and just because you don't read it and take the time to figure it out.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Clark.
So we have here the people that are running the World Health Organization is a guy by the name of Brock Chisholm, and he says to achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas. Now, he was the one that was the first Secretary General. The one that we have now that's running it is a communist from Ethiopia, and he was an anarchist, and he basically overthrew the government of Ethiopia, and that's who is dictating our health.
Mr. Clark, your 5 minutes is up.
So, I mean, that should raise some eyebrows about what we all are doing here. I know that it's impossible here in Branson to address all of this stuff, but we as a nation have got to stop taking advice from people that may not have our best interest at heart, other than power or money.
Your time is up. Please do not abuse it. Other people may wish to speak. Do we have anyone else signed up, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
Your Honor. Bruce Dennison.
Welcome.
12 copies, my first time in the chambers. Do I spread these out here?
Could you give them to the clerk, please, and she will hand them out? Then state your name and address, please, and then proceed.
If I may, for clarity, just for the 5 minutes here. Bruce Dennison, 220 Malone. You're all welcome to read along my script. It's on the inside if you open up the 2 pages that I gave you. When infants are learning to talk, one of their first words are, mine. When grade school children gets a bike and someone else picks it up and takes it for a ride, the child owner says, hey, that's mine. When a high school or college student gets their first car and someone else damages it, the student owner says, you damaged my car. When adults work for years and save to purchase a home and someone or something changes their surroundings, the homeowner says, hey, you're changing my surroundings. Upon asking the zoning department about the home at 530 Iserman, what the zoning was, I was told it's single family. I commented that the 530 Iserman home was divided into a duplex for renting, and another home was to be built in the backyard. The response I got that the back 50 feet of the yard was subdivided. My response was, so there'll be 3 unrelated people living on a lot that was zoned single family. Upon asking if I had missed a mailing or hearing meeting, I was told the decision was an administrative decision to subdivide a parcel to allow another 1,000 square foot home with garage to be built in the backyard gives the appearance that the city is negating their own single-family zoning. Asking when the zoning was done, the answer was the zoning was overhauled in April of 2018 by a consulting firm. Asking if there was any consideration of the neighbors' home values, I'm not remembering any answer to that. Two neighbors asked me if I was building another garage, because my house is next to the backyard of the 530 Eiserman house. As I talked with other neighbors, they were perplexed that no notice or hearing was given, and their input was taken away. The neighbor next door to 530 Eiserman commented that she was having a family room addition built on the back of her home, also commented her view was being taken away with this proposed home being built in the backyard. The renter in the back half of the 530 Eiserman duplex has her 7-year-old grandson on the weekends. The backyard he played in has been taken away. I've personally seen him playing on the curb, on the street side of the curb, the last couple weekends. Neighbors on Parnell were not pleased to learn about the density change. I heard, how is that going to affect my value? My own residence to the west of 530 Eiserman has a concern about 10 inches to 14 inches wide water running off, causing a V in my front lawn. Any ground absorption will be gone with the 1,000 square foot home on that lot that will be 5 foot from my lot line, causing more water runoff to my lot. I would be requesting the city to consider drainage help or a berm to redirect the water away from my front lawn to deter any further erosion on my lot. I'm also asking for a permit for a fence up to 12 feet, depending on the height of the home, 5 feet from my lot. And the question I have is that structure to be built truly 10 feet from the existing structure as per the code page that I've included in your packet. So who are the winners and who are the losers? The city gets another property tax bill. The property owners will sell it for a profit. But what about all the other neighborhood property taxpayers? That's the question I leave with you.
Thank you. Obviously, we have not seen this, or I've not seen this, so we will take this under advisement and try to research this a little further.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it to our
Thank you for your time and all your time serving, managing a city of this size.
Thank you.
Any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
Gary Groman.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
I would apologize. Normally I have a brain freeze when I'm preparing these things, but today my fingers kind of froze and I couldn't type, so I might have to ad-lib some of this, which won't be pretty. I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a happy and blessed Thanksgiving and to thank you for your service during these trying times. I make no bones about it. I believe that outside of getting a vaccine, when it is available, the most important thing individuals can do to help stop the spread of COVID-19 is to wash their hands, avoid large indoor groups, social distance, and wear a mask. In addition, I believe that masking and social distancing provide tools that can enable us to at least enjoy a semblance of a normal life. When it was first announced, when the COVID ordinance was first announced, Chief Matthews said that education would be a major part of the first phase, and he and his officers have done a remarkable job. In my opinion, anyone who doesn't know what it is they have to do or hasn't reached out to get help just doesn't give a damn. I got that from Gone with the Wind. I couldn't resist it. I am so appreciative this board had the guts and courage to do what our president, governor, county commissioner, Hollister, and others didn't do. Listen to the health experts and pass a masking ordinance to help protect us. But the impact of this ordinance will only be as effective as its enforcement. School's over. It's time for enforcement. And as early as this morning, I received information that enforcement activity is increasing. My purpose here tonight is to beseech this board to give their full support to our city administration, police department, and code enforcers in their enforcement efforts. Politics and the normal Branson baloney aside, please encourage them to use every tool in their box to obtain instant compliance and let them know that you have their backs. Obviously, I'm not the brightest bulb in the tree, but it doesn't take that to realize that locally, as well as regionally and nationally, hospitals and the courageous heroes who actually provide the medical services are being taxed to the limits, a situation sure to be exacerbated with anticipated increase in COVID cases between now and Christmas. The police and code enforcers can't do it alone. I would encourage the city to encourage the citizens to call 911 when they observe a business not complying with the ordinance. Myself, and I must admit I ignored Chief Matthews' excellent advice. After today's experience with trying to talk the business in noncompliance, we'll simply call 911 and let the police handle it. I know that's what I should have done in the first place. Some might say that's squealing, bull roar. It's trying to stop a business or individual from spreading COVID, taking up scarce medical resources, and delaying a return to a more normal lifestyle. At this particular point in the COVID journey, why does the opinion of anyone who cares so little for the health and safety of others even worth considering? If the non-masker and half-maskers are right and masks don't make a difference, who gets hurt if they wear one, compared to the potential harm of what can happen if they are wrong? Here's just a few examples of non-compliance that I personally have experienced. This isn't from third hand, this is what I've experienced. Now, this is just this afternoon. I got to keep it short because my mind doesn't go back too many days. 3 no sign ordinances on the south side of Main Street. Now, I must admit, I did call 911 on those. So call me a squealer if you want to. On one of them, the inside person waiting on a customer had no mask on. And another one, I came in and asked the associate who was standing there talking without mask, about the sign. She put a mask on, but not over her nose. She said that was the way she wore it. When I pointed out, and I must admit, I know you might find this hard, but I did it in a very gentlemanly way. I mean, not my normal self. I pointed out that it should have covered her nose. She raised it above her nose. The inside person, and another one that had no sign, the inside person was putting food for sale on a shelf with a mask down around their chin. Just today, driving slowly by entrances looking for proper signage, found 6 stores, 2 restaurants, including Bob Evans and Steak and Shake, without signs meeting the requirements of our city ordinance. And I might add, I've got pictures of all of them, but I won't bore you with them. Personally observed that checking the food line at a grocery store with a mask down to her chin, checking out groceries, taking them and putting them in sacks.
You still have 30 more seconds.
Okay, guy with no mask being waited on by a mass store employee in a major grocery store at the takeout section at the deli department. The fact that he was in the store being waited on by an employee indicates a potential violation. Bad enough, and, well, never mind. Today, as I was being waited on by a clerk getting some takeout food, I asked, do you still have problems with people wearing masks? They responded with words to the effect, some, but when we do, we just have them pull the shirts up over their face. So again, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and thank you. And please, folks, we need an enforcement effort and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a little comment that I think it's amazing how much compliance we have had with this. And there's always some people on the fringe. And the police department has certainly, in my opinion, tried to handle this very nicely. They've tried to not step on people. They've tried to give them warnings. They've tried to move them up. And the vast majority of people are complying with this, both residents and tourists. But we need to step that even up more now because of what's happening with our own hospital as well as others. And we're aware of that. So thank you for bringing attention to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Not disputing what you're saying, but when you have some theaters that have social distancing and pay the cost in the seats they lose, and other theaters that don't have social distancing and don't enforce masking, we're talking in terms of hundreds of people. And that happens quite frequently. So there's a lot of cases where the normal citizen complies, but there's a lot of cases where people aren't compliant. It just makes it tougher for everybody, sir.
Agree. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else?
No, we do not.
could we possibly ask this gentleman to answer a question? I'm looking through all of this and I'm turning it sideways and trying to get to the bottom, but I just have a couple questions.
Certainly, if you want to bring it
Yes,
back.
The orange marker, I take, is the property we're talking about here?
The orange marker is just the backyard that was subdivided from the original 150 by 75-foot lot. So that orange spot is 50 by 75, which means the backyard will be 15-foot deep. It will have a front 25-foot setback, 5-foot on the west side, and it's supposed to be, per the zoning that's on the page that I also included, the zoning calls for 10-foot from the existing structure. It's not 10 foot now. Looking at what has been dug, dirt has been dug and some stone has been laid, and it's like, okay, that doesn't look appropriate. I'm just asking that the letter of the law be followed and the heart and intent of the people that had no knowledge of this going in. The comments were not good, as I was trying to be a pleasant activist, and when people came to me and said, I'll sign a petition if you want to go start one, so I started one. So I've got 20 signatures from area neighbors, and as I mentioned, 2 of them said, or asked me, are you putting up a garage? And I says, no, I'm not, because it's going to be 5 foot from my lot line. So would I have bought that house in March of 2017 if that structure was already there? It would probably been a question in my mind.
Do you have any covenants in that neighborhood like we have in Cantwell Addition? We won't let Bob put a clothesline in his backyard back there. But
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole question.
I said, do you have a covenant within your
I don't believe so.
Neighborhood.
That's just a neighborhood 1 block north of the roundabout.
All right.
Right off of, in the V of Eisenhower and Parnell, Eiserman and Parnell, across the street from the Faith Lutheran Church.
So the separation between the house that's in front of it directly to the west to this house is approximately how much? Do we know? From roof line to roof line, one house here and one house that's going to be built. Do we know?
The house on the corner of Eiserman and Malone?
Yes.
Yes, and the question is, how much?
What's the difference, the distance in roof line between one to the next, east to west?
If we're going to take a gray area of the carport being part of the roof line, it looks like about 4 or 5 feet to my naked eye to the structure to be built. So it's 3 unrelated people groups on a single family lot.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And before you
Yes,
leave,
Larry.
Bruce, so your lot, looking at the map, your lot would be the 1.02 is highlighted on top of where you live. Is that
To the
correct?
right of the orange square, you're correct.
Okay. So that's your house, and then on the left side of that, that's where your driveway comes in. So
Correct.
you're saying that the part that's colored in orange
Yes.
is 5 feet from that property line that abuts yours?
I think I colored the orange to be the total of the 50 by 75,
Okay.
to clarify, yes.
But that, your lot line that separates the orange from your property,
Correct,
you're saying their structure is 5 feet from that line?
correct. But there's less than 10 feet on the other side between the house and the to-be-built structure, which does not appear to apply with the code.
And I can see that because, well, I can see your point about the erosion, because that used to be grass that would absorb the water. And if that's all improved, then all that runoff
Correct.
heads your way.
Which is, I'm trying to figure out the best way to have done that just in the short time I've owned the property, but it's going to be a compounded problem if that's a hard surface, because any ground absorption will be gone. You're exactly correct. So I just kind of get the sense there wasn't all the possible thought that went into that subdividing that could have been, and the neighborhood's not pleased for the most part. I can get more signatures if you like.
Bruce, did you also comment that this house, is it currently under construction?
The topsoil has been dug out and there has been stone laid. There has been no further work done in the last week or so. So it's just loose stone, I'm guessing would be the base for the concrete slab.
The slab, yeah.
It'll be a 1,000 square foot home with a one-car attached garage. So,
Okay, well, I truly appreciate you coming and making the board aware of this.
thank you.
And I'm confident somebody will be getting back to you.
Appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you again.
Okay,
Thank you,
so we have no further speakers?
We do not, Your Clerk.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please read the items? Well, first, are there any items that the audience would like to have brought down from the consent agenda to be discussed in more detail? Hearing none, any alderman wish to be brought down? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you now please read the consent agenda, the items?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes of the November 10th, 2020 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of minutes of the Advisory Park Board meeting of October 20th, 2020. Human Resources Committee meeting of October 21st, 2020. Outside Program Assistant Committee meeting of November 5th, 2020. Final reading of Bill Number 5915, an ordinance approving the amendment to the lease agreement with Recreation Investment and Management Corporation pertaining to a reduction in base rent for fiscal year 2020, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5916, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water for water termination services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5917, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water Company for the purchase of water usage data and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5918, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Utility Service Company Incorporated for ongoing maintenance and scheduled renovations of the city's water towers and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5919, an ordinance approving a time extension amendment for an intergovernmental agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson regarding funding of the city's planned 2020 sewer system improvement projects and authorizing the mayor to execute the amendment. Final reading of Bill Number 5920, an ordinance approving the intergovernment cooperative agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson pertaining the use of the Taney County Firearms Range and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5921, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Radiophone Engineering Incorporated to provide communication services and repairs and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5922, an ordinance approving the renewal of the memorandum of understanding between the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Team, ADAP, Branson Public Schools, and Branson Police Department pertaining to alcohol compliance checks at businesses and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5923, an ordinance approving the reimbursement agreement between the City of Branson and the Taney County Airport and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5924, an ordinance accepting the proposal of UniFirst Corporation pertaining to the rental uniforms and shop towels for the city and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5925, an ordinance amending the adopted 2020 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies for the Tourism Fund for the Branson, Missouri Regional Airport TDD. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you. The floor is open for a motion approving all the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda. I don't think it's fair that you would give me a clicker that doesn't work.
I think it did, don't it?
No,
It did?
It did. It registered, sir.
Its little lights burned out then. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Then the result of the vote is 6 yes and 0 no. So the measure passes unanimously. Can I get by that Mayor Clerk with saying it's, Madam Clerk with saying it's unanimous?
That is fine. Yes, sir.
Was that a yes or a no?
It was a yes, you're fine,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have item 14. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is a resolution for the appointment of a representative and alternate to the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission.
Okay, we will now have a staff report from Mike Ray.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The current Tri-Lakes Biosolids Coalition, made up of the cities of Branson, Hollister, Forsyth, Rockaway Beach, Kimberling City, Reed Spring, Galena, and Sparta, recently worked with legal counsel to form the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission. In January of 2021, this commission will formally assume ownership and responsibility of operations of the biosolids facilities that are currently owned by Taney County as a requirement of the grant funding that was originally presented for construction of the facility. In accordance with the cooperative member agreement recently signed by the commission, the member cities will each appoint by resolution or ordinance one primary representative and one alternate who will serve on the commission board of directors. Each member city representative shall serve on the board of directors for the purpose of making decisions necessary for proper operations and future improvements of the facilities. And each member city shall have one vote on matters concerning decisions made by the board of directors. Each primary representative and alternate shall continue in office until their successor is appointed by the member city and qualified by the commission. If approved, the attached resolution will serve as the City of Branson's appointment of John Manning, Assistant City Administrator, as the primary board member, and Mike Ray, Utilities Director, will be appointed as the alternate. Staff recommends approval of the bill.
Okay. You have heard the report. Do I have a motion adopting this resolution?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Any aldermen? Please vote. The vote is 6 yes and 0 no. The motion passes. It's a unanimous vote. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the next item to us?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5926, an ordinance accepting terms of an agreement between the City of Branson and the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission for Branson to provide contract operation of the biosolids dewatering and drying facilities and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay, I will begin again with a staff report from Mike Ray.
This new operations agreement between the commission and the City of Branson will replace an existing operations agreement between the City of Branson and the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Coalition. Under this agreement, the City of Branson will provide continued management, administrative functions, financial functions, and record keeping, and maintenance and operations of the biosolids facility located at the Branson, Cooper Creek, and Compton Drive wastewater plants. Branson will also transport liquid biosolids by tank truck from other member city facilities and coordinate disbursement of the final Class A treated biosolid material. The City of Hollister will have a similar agreement with the commission to operate the dewatering equipment located at the Hollister wastewater treatment plant. Similar to the coalition agreement being replaced, under this agreement, the commission will pay Branson for all personnel costs, including salaries and benefits, necessary to manage and operate the biosolids facilities, and for the cost of city equipment used for operation of the said facilities. Specific duties are proposed in the operations agreement. Staff recommends approval of this bill.
Okay. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5926. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Any aldermen?
Just for my own curiosity, this seems like a formality that was always planned and put in place. We're not doing this for any other reason than that was the original plan 5 years ago.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please vote. The results of the vote are 6 yes and 0 no. The bill passes by unanimous vote. Item number 16. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5927, an ordinance approving a contract with S&S Pumping Incorporated to accept holding tank and special waste for treatment at the Branson wastewater treatment facilities and authorizing me to execute the contract.
Okay, we'll have another staff report from Mike Ray, please.
Following requirements that's outlined in municipal code, area septic haulers are allowed to deliver domestic waste pumped from septic tanks, small wastewater treatment plants, and holding tanks within Stone and Taney County to be treated at the City of Branson's wastewater treatment facilities. Anticipated volume of waste to be delivered to our facilities in 2021 is approximately 1 million gallons, producing an anticipated revenue of about $17,000. Branson has provided this service at area septic haulers since 2002. Treatment of the waste has had no adverse effects on the facilities and is a benefit to the environment. The 2021 fee structure of $10.11 per thousand for holding tank waste and $21.37 per thousand for septic tank waste will produce adequate revenues to offset treatment costs. The proposed contract and established fee structure was presented to and reviewed by the Budget and Finance Committee on October 22nd, 2020, and the committee recommended the contract be submitted to the Board of Aldermen for approval, and staff recommends.
You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5927. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this bill? Any aldermen? Hearing none, please vote. The vote is 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes unanimously. Moving on to item 17. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5929, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Branson Regional Arts Council pertaining to the provision of services to provide temporary public assistance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay. Thank you. We'll begin with a staff report from Ted Martin, who is invisible. Is he in there? There he is. Thank you, Ted.
Apologies, I missed Joel on 17. Mr. President, members of the board, tonight we bring before you these social services grants. That committee consisted of Alderman Milton, former Alderman Chris Bohink, Pastor Howard Boyd, myself, Chief Matthews from the Police Department, and Melody Pettit. Each year, the city budgets contract for services for temporary public assistance. Bids were submitted for these programs, for outside programs. The committee met on November 5th to review the bids and make recommendations to you for the funding to be awarded. The contracts listed on the detailed analysis page are based on the committee's recommendations, and services are for the 2021 fiscal year with a total award amount of $32,000. Once the contracts are approved and executed, the agencies will be allowed to turn in receipts for reimbursements from January 1, 2021 until December 31, 2021. The committee recommended the city send out a second RFP to use the remaining budgeted funds from what you approved this year. This RFP was issued on November 10th and will close on December 1st, 2020. The Outside Program Assistance Committee will be reconvened to review the RFP submitted, and the recommendations were brought back to you in a future time period. As a quick overview of the awards, the Branson Regional Arts Council for $3,000 for grant funding for youth scholarships for their programs. Elevate Branson, which is a repeat this year, for $7,000 to help people get certain needs like birth certificates, social security cards, so they can be gainfully employed. The Faith Community Health Center for $12,000 for emergency medications. We hear from them great success for cardiac-related medications and diabetes. The Tenny Hills Library awarded $5,000 to continue to expand their children's and young adult book collections for people to use in our community. And the final one, a repeat as well, the Women's Crisis Center of Tenny County for $5,000 for emergency services as people present to that facility on short-term notice. The committee recommends these to you and be available to answer questions for these next 5 agenda items.
Okay, thank you. So we are, again, just to reiterate, that introduction was for items 17 through 21 here, but we're going to vote on them and discuss them one at a time. You heard the first reading of bill number 5929. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, do I have a second? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this item? Any aldermen?
Just a couple quick, that's the business I've been in 50 years. Is this for the economically disadvantaged? The area they have to be referred over to us when they come in off the street, Ted, or?
Most of those are financial need related on emergency services such as the crisis center,
Okay, gotcha.
the Jesus Home, or Elevate Branson. Those go through a vetting process. Most of them have social services, people that work with the people that present towards them. And then the finance department audits all those receipts as they're submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other aldermen?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you. Two, actually. So this year, the upcoming year is for $32,000 for 2021. That's totaling all of the items together. What was the total for 2020? I'm just curious. Was it 32,000 or?
No, ma'am, I believe it's 70 or 80,000, and we went to 70,000 this year. And based on the submissions and comparable to years prior, we came up with the 32,000. That's why we asked to come back out to RFP for a second round.
Thank you.
Our total approval for last year was 70,000, right?
I believe it's, the budget amount was 80, or I'm sorry, correct me, it was 100,000. We only allocated 80,000.
That's correct, okay. Any other questions from the alderman? Please vote. Results of the vote are 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes unanimously. Moving to item number 18, Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for it?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 5930, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Elevate Branson pertaining to the provision of services to provide temporary public assistance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of bill number 5930. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a matter. Any aldermen?
Ted, just a real quick question. Are these only for Elevate Branson participants or the community at large?
All of these are Branson specific.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please vote. Results of the vote are 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes by unanimously. Item number 19. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for that?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 5931, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Faith Community Health Center Incorporated pertaining to the provision of services to provide temporary public assistance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay, you've heard the first reading of bill number 5931. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this item? Any aldermen? Hearing none, please vote. Results of the vote are 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes unanimously. Item number 20. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5932, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Taney Hills Community Library pertaining to the provision of services to provide temporary public assistance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay, you've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5932. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Did you second
Second.
your own? Okay.
Yeah, which one?
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wanting to speak regarding this matter? Any aldermen? Please vote. Results of the vote are 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes unanimously. Okay, item 21, Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5933, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Women's Crisis Center of Taney County Incorporated pertaining to the provision of services to provide temporary public assistance and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5933. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
I'd so move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak regarding this matter? Any alderman?
Ted, there seems to be a level of coordination between Faith Community Health and the Women's Crisis Center here. Prescription assistance. Do you know if that's true or not?
I believe we made a phone call, and some of their resources they gained from other partnering agencies, and this is one of those examples that they're able to work with Faith Community Health to get the medication. So you will see that most of their receipts that come in are for personal hygiene, clothing, food. Sometimes they work with CAM as well for food.
Right.
So we're trying our hardest not to allow for duplication of services.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the alderman? Please vote. Results of the vote are 6 yes, 0 no. The item passes unanimously. Thank you, Ted. Oh, Ted, before you leave, I didn't understand exactly how the recommendation to take another round of requests. You're recommending that, but that's not approved or in this in these bills, right?
That's correct. We had a budget of $70,000, and we allocated the 32 based on the recommendations of the committee, and we felt that there were some gaps that we can continue to fill in our community.
Okay. So we don't need to approve that because we've already approved the total amount?
Up to that
Okay.
amount, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, item number 22, Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5934, an ordinance approving the contract with the Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau pertaining to tourism and marketing services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Thank you. We'll now begin with a staff report from Chris Lebeck.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. This is a request for an agreement with the Branson Lakes Area Convention and Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitor Bureau with regards to spending city marketing dollars as collected under our tourism tax. As a board can see from the staff report and the ordinance, this is for we'll say a little bit more than a year for an initial term to sync this back up with the TCED so that they both run together. And then there's an opportunity with this agreement for 2 additional one-year periods. That timing change is probably the biggest substantive change with regards to this agreement. There's some other opportunities that we've added in negotiating with the CVB. Specifically, we put the Marketing Oversight Committee back into play into approving how the marketing dollars are being spent. We really emphasized in this agreement the use of a contract administrator This board saw this with the convention center, how contracts only as good as it's being administered. So the idea here is that we have somebody that's with the city that has complete oversight and is making sure that the terms of the agreement are being met. And then furthermore, we've beefed up some of the accounting and auditing pieces of this as well. The biggest change you will notice beyond the term is also the dollar amount. Last year it was, I believe, $2.9 million due to the pandemic and what has happened in the city. Staff is only comfortable requesting $1.5 million at this time, and that's what this contract is written for. There is an opportunity in here mid of next year to reevaluate that, and we're hopeful that the numbers will improve such that we can come back before the board and allocate more marketing dollars for marketing the area. So staff recommends approval, and it is what it is. Thank you for your time.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5934. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter?
We don't let any Tennessee volunteers come up here. What are you talking about?
State your name and address. You know the drill.
Marshall Howden, 106 Rose O'Neill. So, Alderman Simmons, I have to say that I think you were prophetic in a sense. And when we had the discussion of Bill 5599, you said that the next time this got brought up, we'd probably be quite in the same place, you know? And that's a little bit how I feel that we're at right now. Not to say there hasn't been some amazing work done by some people on this board and in the community as well. But I think it's kind of important that we note that this topic has a lot of things that kind of go in concurrency with each other. And so we just had the Chamber's 5 and 5 study, which I think had some really great, fruitful things that came out of it. But again, in some of the discussions, the question is, you know, how do we act on these things moving forward, not just continue to have all of these discussions, you know? So again, I want to reiterate something I've said a lot of times in the past, which is the concept of marketing and messaging, right? So marketing are these tax dollars that we contract with these different entities, and messaging are things that can come from this board that can go out there, that can combat things like the erroneous talking points that we see spread on Facebook about our shows, or when the Springfield News Leader writes an article saying there's a rip between the shows and City Hall, you know? So messaging things are so important in how we can move forward with that. Again, I think you guys know what my proposal is. I think we should establish a music and theater commission at City Hall, which they have in other cities, which the 5 and 5 sound diplomacy CEO was very comfortable with and understood, and had basically said when I brought that up that this is something that we do in many of our cities, you know? So it's about kind of bringing this all forward and moving in one direction. So I really appreciate your time today, and I really hope that we can see action on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Anyone else from the audience wishing to speak? Welcome, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen, and I guess lady. My name is Chris Meyer. 269 State Highway 248 is my office location. Just to give you a background, most of you know we're in the lodging business here in the community, also in the ticketing business. For years, I served on the DMC, which was the District Marketing Council. I actually chaired that for a couple of years back in the day. It's been a while. Started on the TCED board when it first started, and now I'm also on the TCED board representing the county. I don't come here representing the TCED board or the chamber, whatever. I come here as an individual business owner, but I share that with you because I have intimate knowledge of how this process has worked over years and over time. And so if you didn't know that, and so what I want to do is give you some suggestions on how you can make this contract even better, okay? And so hopefully you'll take those into serious consideration, because you don't get to do this every day. And so I think I've got some suggestions, and I'll try and be as brief as I can. and hopefully I won't go too much all over the board, but I just have, in some cases I have questions that I'll ask, and then in other cases I'll give you suggestions. And so I'll just get started on the detailed analysis. It talks about that all the marketing materials must carry the City of Branson logo. So my question there becomes, well, what if the City of Branson's logo is different than the community's logo if they change it? Because they're never changed in unison. And I guess part of that is well, what is marketing material? Is that just print or is that everything? And sometimes you got to think about stuff from a creative standpoint. And so I think it's great if you get credit, but hopefully throughout the marketing, you're going to know it's the City of Branson. And so I just asked that as a question. When you get into the document itself, I think when you get into scope of services, this is an area where I think you guys have a huge opportunity for improvement in how it's worded. It talks about it should be used for marketing outside of a radius of 30 miles. But then down in 4.1, it says that this will use this media that promotes Branson locally. Well, to me, local is in Branson, and so that local wording there with the 30-mile radius, and then for me, I'm like, is 30 miles too close? And I'm guessing that's probably, we're trying to encompass maybe Springfield in there. But as you look at the fourfold items, it talks about attracting overnight visitors to Branson, increasing tourism and city tax revenue, increasing demand in Branson for hotel, motel, resort, and campground inventory for the purposes of increasing occupancy, and to increase the demand for all other local attractions, including live shows, entertainment located in Branson by visitors of all ages throughout the term of this contract. So if I have one more person come to town, this could be considered a success. And I've always been taught that there's this thing called SMART with goals. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And there is nothing in here that is measurable. Okay, so if you're at $100 million, and I'm just making numbers up, okay? But if you're at $100 million, do you want to be at $100 million in $1? Or would you rather be at $105 million or $110 million or whatever? And so I think you guys have to establish in here, what are you striving for at the end of the day? Because there's nothing in here that says what you're really striving for in all these categories. And so I would probably reword this, and I would probably reword it where, it's demand for live shows, attractions, retail and dining in Branson by individual percentages. So what does that percentage need to go up to be considered successful? Is it 2%, 3%, 5%? Or is it even a dollar amount, looking at the dollar amount? And it's not, for me, it's not just about inflation. I mean, you got to have percentages increase in inflation. And I know we're in a pandemic, but you got to look at this long term and not just, we should be way up next year. Assuming the vaccine's coming and all this stuff, there should be a turnaround. But if you looked at what was happening in the theater industry, I think when I looked the other day from December 2018 on, like 20 out of 24 months, that industry's been down. That should concern us greatly. And that's part of the reason we did this, the Sound Diplomacy did the theater study. But I don't know how you measure effectiveness and results based on the scope of services. So my challenge to you there is get specific, get measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound so that we can say at the end of the day, is this a success? I don't think adding just one person to the community is success. The other thing is there's no mention in here about first-time visitors. And as a community, we've had that is a goal for, we want to try and achieve 25% first-time visitors. That's not mentioned in here as well. And so those items were on, I guess, page 2 of 13. On page 3 of 13, on 4.4, it talks about utilizing the Marketing Oversight Committee. And so the question there is, are you using the TCED's Marketing Oversight Committee? And if you are, that probably should be spelled out in here. But here's a question that you have to ask is, what happens if the Marketing Oversight Committee and the city aren't in alignment? Okay, because they have different constituents, they have a different district, they have people that aren't in the city limits, and maybe that would happen, maybe that wouldn't. But you have to ask that question, and then because the city is not picking who's on the MOC, how do you as the city make sure that you have proper representation on the MOC, but you have no control over? So a theater could be picked to be on there, or maybe a theater is not picked to be on there. So how are you going to have the MOC, which is under another political entity, represent you as the city? I don't know the answer to that question. Now, that doesn't mean the MOC is bad or good, but if you're trying to protect your interest, I think you have to look at, how does all that work? 4.5.2, it says a list of measurement criteria to judge the success of the campaign. And when I saw this, I'm like, who is determining that criteria? Is that the city? Is that the MOC? Or is that, in this case, the Chamber CVB? So I think that needs to be clearly defined and maybe worded where we determine who is determining that measurement. If I'm the Chamber CVB and I'm determining my own measurement for success, I don't think that's the intent of what you're wanting to try and do there. And I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of difficulty speaking with this mask, so my glasses are even fogging up here, so bear with me a little bit. 6.3, which is on page 4, it says here on this one, it says, in the scope of the marketing and promotion arrangements, not market or promote the city as a tourism destination in any manner which is intended or likely to produce a direct benefit to the contractor or any affiliate, subcontractor, or private person or business over and above that gained by the city as a whole. And so I started scratching my head there saying, how do you determine if an individual gets benefit more than the city as a whole? And I think there are times where we need to give individual businesses, they're going to be shown up on the ad more than others, and they may benefit more. Now, I don't know how that relates to gain by the city as a whole. And so sometimes I think we've gotten where we don't want to put a featured entertainer out there because we don't want to make the other entertainers mad or whatever. I don't know. But sometimes we need to feature entertainers so that people will come to town. So, for example, right now, Rhonda Vincent's here. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but we need to be telling everybody she's here with her friends over at Andy Williams. And so she should be in the Christmas commercial, in my opinion. She is not. If she gets benefit, great. But if I'm trying to maximize visitorship, I need to put the things that are going to drive the most visitors. And I know that's tough for some people to hear, but then the people that aren't in the commercial will still get benefit because there's more visitors here in town. So maybe I'm reading this wrong, but because I don't know how you determine how the benefit is gained by the city as a whole. I don't understand that. So I just throw that out, that we can't put everything in a commercial. It's just impossible in this town because there's so much to do. But we need to feature the entertainers and those folks that will drive the most visitors to this town. So that's input. On number 7 report, 7.1, page 5 of 13, it talks about your quarterly marketing reports. And in that, there is no mention that show revenue or attraction revenue. So I think you guys need to see show revenue and attraction revenue when the Chamber CVB is given the report. It's got hotels and other things down in here, but there's no mention of show revenue or attraction revenue. So I would add that in here as well. The other thing I think that is really missing in this whole document is how we incorporate the sound diplomacy study into here. There's no mention of anything in here about that. And so one of the items that they had talked about was this Office of Theater Innovation. And you guys have a great opportunity, I think, to help guide that. And they even said, put it through the CVB/Chamber. And so we need that advocate for the theater industry. And so I think there's a great opportunity. That's not really part of reports, but I just stuck that comment right after this. So I think you guys have an opportunity before, I guess, your second reading to make these changes as it relates to those. Let's see if I don't know that I have anything else, but let me look. I think that's probably it. I think we have to get this right. You know, if you look at what's happened in the market, you guys know this based on your tax revenues. I mean, the hotel industry is way down. The theater industry is down more than the hotel industry, and you know, we've got to make sure that we're measuring the right things and holding people accountable, because we know that more people that come here and spend more money, it's going to be beneficial for everybody. So does anybody have any questions, I guess, for me before I head back to my seat?
Anyone have any questions for him?
No, I previously talked.
Chris, thank you for bringing up these points. In fact, I think they're all valid points that we need to take in consideration. I appreciate the fact that you are in the lodging industry and we're talking about this contract. And so what I'm also hearing you say is the health of the theater industry directly impacts your industry.
Oh, absolutely. When the theaters closed down in, I guess it was March, you know, we even tried to keep one hotel open longer and we couldn't do it. And if anybody knows me, they know I'm an advocate for the theater industry because that's what makes us truly unique and different as a community. You know, and I read, and if you haven't read the theater study, I encourage you to do that because there's some good stuff in there. And what I found in that is that our customers love our entertainment. The problem is we're our own worst enemy in our community because we rate the theater industry worse or less or however the terminology is than the guy that's coming into town. And so I think we've got to embrace the theater and entertainment community. And I think, you know, I saw a presentation at the Missouri Governor's Conference on Tourism with a guy from Nashville. And I was like, I wish everybody could see this in Branson because they integrated entertainment into everything they did, even though they got a lot of other industries. And the thing, like, I'll give you the example, like even their bike rack looked like a musical node and stuff like that. And so they embraced entertainment. And it just saddens me when we have some of the best live family entertainment in the country. And we really don't, in my opinion, we don't give them their due. We really don't. And I think as a community, we've got to start looking at the perspective from the outside entertainer. But yeah, I can't live on 3 months of summer business, you know, based on what I'd call more of attractions. Now, obviously, people go to other attractions other time of the year, but that's the primary draw. So does that answer your help?
Yep. And I want to thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts.
Any other questions? Chair, of him? Chris just brought up something I'd like to address. because both of us served on the tourism district for a long period of time. As far as the number of points that you had set forth, Chris, how many has the tourism district addressed that you know of in their contract?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't think all of the things I've addressed here that they addressed. I'm just one member on that board, and when we were going through our contract negotiations, I had a whole long list. They probably didn't like listening to me that long either. And some of them got included and some of them did not, Bill, from that perspective. So, you know, you don't
But some of them were assimilated into.
Some of them were not. Now, I would probably say that what I call the SMART goals, not all of those were put in there. But I think if you don't know where you're going, it's going to take a lot longer to get there. And you guys got to, I think you guys got to help determine where are we going. Make sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, any alderman wish to comment now?
Chad, you have?
Didn't know whether there was anybody
Oh.
out in the audience.
Oh, I thought we did that.
Just one.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Okay, then alderman.
Thanks. Chad, can we start with the one that says number 4? That's it. Okay. I want to go to the next slide. There. So I'm going to make a few amendments and then a few comments. The amendment that I'm going to address, I'm using information from the CVB and from the Sound Diplomacy study. This board is responsible for the residents and businesses within the city limits and for the tourism tax dollars that are collected within the city for marketing purposes. CVB provides a quarterly and end-of-year marketing report to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen relies heavily on these reports to make decisions for the city. It is important for the Board of Aldermen to understand how our tourism tax is affecting those living and working within our city. Our Branson residents will be asked to renew the tourism tax this April. With the information that this Board of Aldermen is provided, how would we respond to questions like, what results or analysis do you have that shows the marketing effect from the city tourism tax dollars to the businesses within the city? So I'm going to go on with the following pages are from the CVB end-of-year reports. A few pages. What I want to note as we go through these is some pages are Branson specific. There's only a few. Some may be for the TCD district, and a couple of them, I'm not sure if they're for the district or for the area. Next slide, Chad, please. So using the key performance indicators, now this was from the end-of-year visitor profile study from the CVB. Next slide. So the slide says, since 2012, Branson's increased visitation 6 of the past 7 years. So the heading says Branson. So question on the table is, are these City of Branson numbers or Branson area numbers? Next slide. This says the 2000 visitation at 2.9 million, which is a record for Branson. Here again, it says Branson. Experienced 9.1 million visitors, and the question is this Branson or the Branson area? Next slide. So this heading says Branson. However, on the bottom left, you'll see the question that was asked in the survey. How did you travel to the Branson Lakes area in this most recent visit? So there again, it's, I don't know if it's Branson or the Branson Lakes area. Next slide. We've seen this, I just wanted to put it back up there before, but you can see from basically 2014, so the last 5 years, the theater industry is declining significantly. Next slide. The number of live shows that we're seeing have hovered around 3 shows for several years. This year, a new question was added, and I'm glad they added it. But then when we look at the chart on the left, it shows the number of shows seen on the last visit. Again, on the bottom, the question asked in the survey, what is the total number of Branson shows you saw on this visit? And they've broken it out now, but then they've added a theme or amusement park shows, and I don't know if that's SDC, but there again, I don't know if these are Branson shows or area shows. Next slide. Heading says Branson. Question of the survey again says, please indicate how likely you are to return to the Branson Lakes area. Next slide. And I just highlighted in their key takeaways, they mentioned Branson several times. So as an alderman, when I see these reports, when they say Branson, I'm thinking they really mean Branson. Next slide. Same Branson question. Live shows continue to be Branson's primary driver of visitation, which has been that way since we've been keeping records. But the ratio has been declining for the past 4 years. Next slide. Here again, they're just using the word Branson, and again, when I read that, I'm thinking it's the city, but maybe it needs to say Branson or the TCD district or something else. Next slide. And here's an example. So this says the overall Branson visitors spent more money in this area. So this heading says Branson area, not Branson. So if you take, on this slide, it shows there's $306 per person trip spending. And the previous slide we just saw showed that we were at a record 9.1 million. So the math, I'm trying to triangulate the math, and this would represent 2.784 million would be the number you would get from this information we've been provided. Next slide. Using our financial end of year report 2019. Next slide, please. Ooh, that's getting small. Branson and this is from our director, finance. Branson and the Tri-Lakes area attracted millions of visitors in 2019 who contributed over $2 billion in the local economy. So the previous slide, or excuse me, the information we get from the CVB says $2.784 billion, and our city is saying over $2 billion. There again, I'm just trying to connect some dots. Next slide. Tourism taxes decreased 357,000 due to the decrease in tourism activity. Keep in mind this is 2019, it's not COVID related. Next slide. CVB slide shows that Branson's sales tax and tourism tax were down. So when you look at this chart, I think a fair question to ask is, why is the city of Branson tax down when Stone and Taney County tax, Stone County and TCD taxes up? So
TCD tax is retail, that's the reason right there. You got Walmart and Home Depot, though, tourism
well, that's
tax,
city sales tax, right?
The TCED touches the lake, like you said earlier, the Branson Lakes area.
Yes.
Tourism Enhancement District, which is broader than the city limits.
So and I agree with that. And so what this is saying is the area is doing better than the city. Isn't that what this says?
I have no idea, Larry, what's in this Stone.
Oh, you do know, you just.
No, I know the TCD tax, but I don't know what's in the Stone County tax.
Okay. Stone County is doing better than City of Branson. TCD tax is doing better than the City of Branson. I would think a member on this board would at least ask the question, why is that? I think that's a fair question. Detailed reporting for the city would help answer this question. Next slide.
I think that is a fair question. I think part of it is due to the tremendous amount of money spent outside the city. Silver Dollar City has had, 3 years with multi-millions of dollars being invested in their attractions. That would certainly affect the TCED and the Stone County tax. In Taney County, certainly Big Cedar, tremendous amount of investment in Big Cedar. So there's a lot of money being invested here outside of the city of Branson that has previously not necessarily been the case. So that would explain some of it. Wouldn't explain all of it, probably.
Right. Okay, I agree with that, but I think for this board, we're responsible for the tourism tax that's collected and how it's spent. And when I see we have a bucket of money and our responsible area of responsibility, being the city, is down and other areas are up, I think it's more than a fair question to at least get into it and see and ask the question why. So I'm making a motion for an amendment. See how I did that, Lisa? I explained it and then I went into the motion.
We might have a discussion on that.
You're right, spot on.
So we're
way outside the realm.
So what we are working with is a contract that has been developed and signed by a third party. And so there's no agreement by a third party to sign for amendments.
Say that again?
You're asking to change a contract on the fly by motion that a third party has already agreed to. There's only two possible outcomes at this point, Alderman. Number one is you defeat the contract that's before you, or number two, you make a motion to have staff go back and renegotiate the contract under different terms. Those are your choices. You don't have the opportunity during a board meeting to amend a contract that's already been signed and presented to a board by a third party. That's what Ms. Westfall's trying to explain to you. I think Alderman Simmons understood what I was trying to say.
Okay, so then, and I did not understand that, so instead of an amendment, I guess what you're saying, my request would be for this board to ask to go back on the contract and request this change.
Again, there's a third party involved here, okay? So what I'm saying is the board has a couple of choices. They can call for the vote at some point and vote on the contract before them and approve it or deny it. And if it's denied, then that's marching orders probably to the city, since we do need this, to go back and come up with different terms. That's option one. Option two is the board can decide to go ahead and basically postpone this item, or with an instruction to city staff to go back and renegotiate with regards to whatever areas of concern the board has brought up. Now, again, there's no requirement under that for the third party that we are negotiating with, that we are contracting with, to agree to those terms. They may look at us and say, we're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and say no. Okay, so those are the paths we can take here today. But amending a contract on the fly that's already been signed off on by the party we are contracting with, can't do that. It's really that simple.
So it's either an all or nothing, accept it the way it's written, or ask to postpone it and renegotiate. Okay. Okay, well, I think the points that Chris Meyer brought up, and I had more information to share, but I think we're far from having a final contract ready to sign, but I also know that I'm one of 6. So that would be my suggestion.
So our current alternatives, as I understood our attorney to say, is that we do have a contract signed by the other party at this time. So we are voting to either approve that contract, deny that contract, or postpone that contract and ask for further consultation on it. We can ask for changes to it, but that doesn't mean they have to agree to changes to it.
That's correct.
One other thing I'd like to ask is our contract expires on December 31st, does it not?
Correct.
And we only have one more meeting after this meeting this year. So we would not have time to get another contract in effect if we postpone it. Now, I don't know that that's a critical thing, but it's just pointing that out.
Yeah, and so
It wouldn't be approved until the following year sometime.
And Mr. President, can I offer a couple more items? Number one, staff spent time negotiating this in good faith with the contractor. We recommend approval of this. This is a step forward from where we were, number one. Number two is there is an opportunity. There's a couple things that we're forgetting within this contract. Number one, if we are not happy with the quality of services that the CVB is providing to us, we have shrunk the period down. Before, in the old one, it was 90 days. They got 30 days to cure, and we can bounce them. Okay, so we have that opportunity within this contract. The third point that I want to point out is that we have built into this, based on the kind of the, let's call it the tenuous economic conditions we're currently in as a city due to where we are, we've built in the ability mid-year to come back and reevaluate. During that reevaluation period for the funding that we are going to provide the CVB, there's also an opportunity there. If we realize that, hey, the marketing dashboard, the other things that are going on aren't accommodating some of these concerns and some of these needs, then guess what? We can amend the contract at that point. And I'm not suggesting we're kicking the can down the road, but I think there's a misconception right now that this is final, it's fixed in stone. It's only fixed in stone till the next period in which we revisit it. So I just want to point those things out to the board as we review what's before us.
Chris,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Chris, if I could just ask, no contract is better than the enforcement of the contract, of course. And there's going to be a heavy burden laid on this council in the future to look at every report that comes to us, every quarterly report, every year-end report, and bring these things up at that time. And we do have a right to have the contract cured within 30 days, or we can cancel the contract. So we're going to have to, the board is going to always have to do their job. They're going to have to really ask all of these tough questions every single time these come up. And I'm afraid over the years, as far as the city's gone, that's time consuming, and we've had lots of things that consume a lot of time, and that has been pushed to the background. We've just accepted the report and gone on our way. But in the future, we can't do that no matter what contract we have. We have got to take a careful look at it and ask every single question each time we get a report. And if we don't think they're adequate, that's the time to deal with it, not at the end of the year or the end of the period or 5 years. Deal with it when that report comes out. If that's not a suitable report, then we've got to let that be known.
That's the other.
Now, I'm sorry, Larry, I interrupted you. Would you like to proceed?
I understand what you just said, but this, you know how important, you know of everybody, how important this is to our community.
Certainly.
I think Chris brought up some great points. At a quarterly meeting or a quarterly report, I mean, he brought up putting in some measurements, some measuring sticks for success. So I think I think Chris has some very important points. I have some others. I'm not going to bother going through them tonight, understanding it's an all or nothing. I don't know what would, because it's so important, why wouldn't we agree to postpone the contract for 60 days, go through this diligently, and come up with a good contract?
We can ask for anything we want, but asking and getting are two different things.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm asking, I guess.
If
Well,
we
then,
did that, what would happen between the time the current contract expires and we had to proceed?
This existing contract would just stay in effect until we renewed this contract.
If the other party agreed to it, which they probably would. But, yeah. Then, if we could, let's, Jeff, could we start on your end? Could you kind of give your thoughts on this, and we'll each do that before we go to a vote?
Right. Well, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to have the third party maybe answer some questions, or?
Certainly. If you'd like to ask them a question, they're here. Welcome, sir. Please state your name and address.
Your Honor, members of the board, Jonas Argis, currently serving as the interim president and CEO of the Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau. Happy to take any questions.
So Jonas, addressing one of Larry's concerns, I would think now we're sort of working on good faith, but addressing are we calling it Branson Tri-Lakes, Tri-Lakes area, is that something that can easily be consolidated and come up with a consensus of how we're going to use that every time it comes up in a document like this or in advertising?
Yeah, I'm sure we could take it under consideration. I think if you zoom out a little bit, we're the DMO, which DMO stands for Destination Marketing Organization. So I think we can debate, is Branson the city limits of Branson? Or is Branson the destination incorporating the greater region that is known and has a brand awareness of Branson?
Yeah, I would describe boundaries for me. I see it from Arkansas state line up to maybe Saddlebrook, to the west here past Forsyth, and probably out to Cape Fair. So I myself, I've been here 31 years, and I know that Branson's a region. So like when I say I'm going to Kansas City, I might drive through Kansas City, but I'm actually going someplace outside. Same with St. Louis. And I guarantee you people from Kansas City or St. Louis say they're coming to Branson and they go fishing at Cape Fair. So, that's my definition of the area. We're obviously in the center of the bubble. People are coming to Branson, but Silver Dollar City's not in Branson. Big Cedar Lodge is not in Branson. So, but I think to his point, we ought to be more consistent on what we're calling the area. We're just going to call it Branson, or we're going to call it something wider to take under consideration.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Bill, I said I was going to ask each one to kind of give their thoughts on this at this point before we go to a vote.
Oh, I've got hundreds of thousands of opinions on this stuff. I negotiated the original contract with the CVB. We're trying to meld two contracts into one, and I've stated this before. You're not going to market yourself out of the problem that we're in. We have an economic problem in this area. We have a development problem in this area. We need to work as strongly as we can, and in discussions we have, and I believe that the tourism district and the CVB has strongly stated that theaters and live attractions are the single most probably important marketing item that we have here, and I have been assured by them that they want to strongly market the theaters and live attractions in this area. I don't think that you can take the marketing and blame anything that's happened in Branson. Branson has tripped its own self up. It had its blinders on for years. We noticed for over 10 or 15 years when I was on there that this stuff was coming down the pike, but yet it was very little action that was taken because the answer was they always come back. And times have changed. the people that were my mom and dad's age that made Branson what it was, and Bob, your parents, and Mid and Evelyn on our side, they've passed away. Things have changed. Our music interests have changed, and I think that the study has stated that as well. But I would like to hear from Jonas and state their dedication towards seeing and ensuring that live shows and live entertainment is adequately marketed. I think that type of assurance we need to hear.
Well, it is one of the 3 pillars of the marketing plan that has been approved by TCD in this body, and we will continue to do that. You know, I understand some of the concerns, and if I may comment on a few things.
Sure, bud.
We're not opposed to any KPIs, right? I would much prefer, as an organization, to have standards and metrics that are measurable that we can be held accountable to. That's actually a little easier than some of the circumstances that we have to, you know, live under. But what are those metrics, right? So if I want to be held accountable, or if we're going to be held accountable to those metrics and have very little influence on how that performs, that'd be a tough agreement to be a party to. You know, and we talk about measuring tax revenue, right? So you know, the slide that Alderman Milton put up regarding receipts being down, that's under the assumption that everybody's collecting and remitting. Do we know that's the fact?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I wanted to talk about the metrics too. Even if we were somehow able to establish, they would be coming from one side. And then you know as well as I do that the other side is going to have their own measure of success, and you're just going to have constant that. Yeah. It has to be something tangible.
It has to be consistent.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the other thing from during our discussions, and I don't want to call them negotiations, that we came together and had a great discussion as a staff team, and city gave us ample time to review, and we had no less than 6 senior staff members and board members review this contract with Chris. You know, you know, I just want to make sure that we do the right thing, because that's what everybody in that building wants to do.
Right.
You know, we talk about, you know, a bad opinion or bad, you know, view of the theater industry. There's nobody in that building that doesn't want the best for this market. They work their guts out on a daily basis to drive visitation, get people to stay longer, and get people to spend more money. That's the objective. And I don't know how, you know, measurable or what metrics we can use to demonstrate that.
Right, right.
Right?
Well,
And
would you
so-
take under consideration just giving them as much love as you can?
Sure, yeah, but I think you also have to be cognizant of the fact that if we start trying to segregate reporting methods, and so as a reminder, 100% of the 25% of marketing dollars minus the 2% admin goes straight to marketing. So if we need to start adding administrative layers on top of that, that was one of my comments to Chris's comment. Please don't put or suggest anything in the contract that somebody should do without having a direct source of revenue identified, how that gets paid for.
All right, that's all I got.
Could we get him to address one thing, if we could, please? And that's something Larry had alluded to. I don't know what's all in the Stone County tax, but I do know that they have a lot of condos, hotels, and of course they have a super center out there as well. It's Stone County that's done extremely well. But do you have some sort of an explanation on why they're up so much?
Are we referring to the 2019 numbers?
I don't know. Was that 2019 numbers?
I would have to make an educated guess that the fact that Silver Dollar City had a reported record year for attendance would have some basis to that increase in Stone County.
That's all. Okay.
Jamie?
No, I mean, I think, you know, everything's moving in the right direction, I think. I mean, I think the contract the way it is now, it's, you know, it's got out clauses, but I think with the theater study that was recently done, I think everything's moving in a direction where we're hoping to see. And like Alderman Simmons said earlier, we need to just be more cognizant each quarter as we review these and have the discussions at those times. But with where we're at now, I'm comfortable with where it's at and moving forward.
I'm sorry, real quick, point of clarification. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought this first part of the contract was until April of 21. That's when it syncs up with TCD for an annual renewal, correct? Or am I mistaken?
The first term is until March 31st, 2021. And that way, and then there's an opportunity for a renewal period. What I was referencing was, remember the not to exceed amount right now is 1.5 million based on the economic conditions. So the idea is sometime midsummer we will come back together and figure out if there's more monies available and adjust things. So that out has been built into the contract because again, we're taking this down from almost $3 million, we're cutting it in half based on what's going on.
The revenue is what it is.
It is what it is. And then the other key point, kind of Alderman's Skanes' point and also Alderman Whitus and Alderman C is this contract is now written in a way to where there's city level accountability as well. You will notice it says MOC and city. There's a contract administrator that is designated. Just like with the convention center, there's now somebody that will be, for lack of better words, micromanaging the CVB to make sure that they are satisfying what they should be doing under this agreement. So again, that's something we didn't have fleshed out or spelled out in grave detail before in our previous versions. That has since been changed with the version before the board. So not only will the board's level of diligence be there, but also city level of diligence as well.
Alderman King.
I thought that Mr. Meyer and Alderman Milton brought up some great points to be considered. I also am not a fan of an all or nothing. I don't think that we should let perfection delay a renewal and the progress of this contract. I know that we need to come up with some compromises for our theaters, but there's non-theater businesses that are benefiting from the value of the marketing services as well, and I'd hate to see those delayed. So I am comfortable moving forward with the contract that's before us today, but I also, to second everyone else's input, would like to see us revisit these things and find the compromises with the points that were made by Mr. Meyer and Alderman Milton during the review period.
Alderman Milton, I skipped you there. I didn't mean to, but you just spoken, so I skipped right over you.
That's okay. I would like permission, if you would indulge me, to let me go through my second slide. If I don't do that, I won't be able to sleep tonight, and I'll go do it really, really fast.
We don't want you to have insomnia.
No telephone calls at 11.
And I'll go through this really fast. Sound diplomas, we did this Branson Theater study, next slide. Next slide. Oh, boy, can we enlarge that by chance? Okay. Oh, good. What this is showing is the importance, and it's not Larry Milton saying these words, it's Sound Diplomacy saying these words. We paid them $100,000. It took a year's time to do this. So Branson's Live Theater and Music Economics, it drove 1,915 jobs, 33 million in earnings, and 105 million in economic output. Total number of jobs generated and supported by the music sector in this area was 2,288, which accounted for 9% of the employment in Taney County, with an ecosystem of 44 million. Next slide. Next slide. I thought this was important. What this says is the music output from the city of, throughout the nation, per capita averages $444. Look at some of this, well, look at the right bubble. In the case of cities such as Austin and New York, which have high flows of music tourism and strong, solid industries, their figures are $1,899 and $1,604 compared to ours of $2,700. That's comparing the music output to New York City and New Orleans and Austin. Next slide. More jobs, more this, more that. Live theaters support 81% of the direct employment. Bottom left there, visitors highly rate Branson's live theater industry and interest in live shows remains high. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So as long as we've been keeping records, CVB says shows are the #1 driver. Next slide. This is from the chamber. Next slide. Theaters are down. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the last 10-year history of the amount of dollars spent by visitor for all of our tourism tax business categories. I highlighted the theaters and live entertainment in red. It's been declining the last several years. A few common statements to justify not featuring the theaters with tax dollars or marketing dollars. We hear statements all the time. Nobody goes to shows anymore. I don't go to shows, do you? The quality of shows are lacking. In 2019, somebody who doesn't agree with those statements paid $73 million. And if you use an average, I don't know what an average ticket price is. I'm just guessing. If it's $35, that means over $2 million. Are you shaking your head?
I don't think that average ticket price in Branson's been $35.
You think it's much less?
I think it's lower.
I do too. But the point is, if it was 35, that's 2 million people that paid to go to shows. And if it's less than 35, it would be more than 2 million people. I agree with you. So regardless about how we feel about the shows, 2 million people went and paid. Sound diplomacy writes, visitors highly rate Branson's live theater industry and interest in live shows remains high. Next slide. So if we can zoom in just about. So I know we're not making any amendments, but I think something to consider is instead of having 4 objectives, I was going to suggest 5 objectives. And so we would just, if we remove the word fourfold, all we would do is we would increase demand for live shows and entertainment as a separate objective. Thank you for the time for letting me go through that. What this, in my opinion, what this is all saying is the theater industry is just, it's critical. Branson's built up a name of theaters. I hear things like, we don't want to spend marketing dollars on theaters because they're in a price war and they're selling their tickets for $5 and $10.
Can I clarify, please?
Sure.
Who states that?
I don't think we want to go down that road at this session.
I'll stay after.
Okay. But no matter what, I know there's price wars. I know there's both extremes in our theaters. We have the I'm going to say the lesser shows, maybe less quality, and they're selling tickets for $5 or $10. We have the other side. We have the Sight and Sounds and the Dixies and the Clay Coopers and the Presleys and the Duttons. We've got some quality shows, and the majority of them maintain price integrity. What the theaters charge, I think is, I'm going to say it's irrelevant. If they're bringing in $72 million, $73 million a year, it doesn't matter if we had 100 shows charging $10 or 10 shows charging $100, right? It's the industry, it's not the individual shows.
If I can, Larry, it seems to me that we don't have any disagreement how important the shows are to us. I think we're all in agreement with that, and we can all see that. But the question now is to relate that to this contract. And so what are your specific points here to the contract?
Well, for example, this is one. Instead of taking an all or nothing, if we, and I know we'd have to go back and negotiate, but putting more of a focus on the theaters. I think there hasn't been enough focus, and we can debate back and forth and back and forth. I think there's a lot of examples. Our November newsletter that just went out. Our November news, this city is so counting on our Christmas season to try to make ends meet. November newsletter went out, didn't mention shows. We've got Christmas shows, we've got a huge season. Why wouldn't we be screaming shows? That's just an example.
I'd have to clarify, but I'm pretty sure the newsletter is content, paid content for those that want to advertise in the newsletter.
Okay. I'd also question, this contract as written is a contract between the city and the CVB, yet the Marketing Oversight Committee is the one who's making a lot of decisions, so we can't hold the CVB accountable because they can't hold the MOC accountable. So should our contract be with the TCED and not with the CVB? We're signing a contract with an entity that has no authority.
Mr. Chair, I call the question. I think we've had enough discussion, but I do
brother,
agree with them that.
There you go.
Larry,
So let's just take it the way it is,
point,
right?
man. You just beleaguer the point. Everybody in here knows what you're saying. We all support the theaters.
So let's
And
agree
we
this.
have between now and April to go in and perfect a contract. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out.
Okay.
I call the question.
Do we need a second to that call to question?
Is that a motion, please?
Is that a motion? Is that what you said? I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to call the question. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, the motion's been called and seconded. All those in favor of calling the question, vote. Please vote. I guess all those in favor or not in favor, please vote.
I have 5 responses. If everyone could please register their votes one more time. Thank you.
Vote is 4 yes, 2 no. So the question, vote to call the question has passed. The vote is King yes, Milton no, Whitus yes, C yes, Skanes yes, Simmons no. Okay, so we've called the question. Now we come to the vote. So please vote on the original item, which is the contract.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the vote is 5 yes, 1 no. King yes, Milton no, Whitus yes, C yes, Simmons yes, Skanes yes. So the contract did pass. Okay. I don't know about anybody else, but I would like to take about a 5-minute break at this point. Could we have a short recess? We'll hold it to 5 minutes. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, I believe we're on item 23. Would you provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5935, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Sudden Link pertaining to data communications and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay. We'll begin with a staff report from Chad Foster.
Members of the board, the city uses Metro Ethernet data connectivity for network communications between the various locations throughout the city. This includes data to access file servers, for example, and our voice over IP telephone system. Examples of all the various sites that we connect with this is City Hall, fire stations, treatment plants, the utilities, admin offices at the water tower, facilities maintenance, et cetera. Dedicated internet service is commercial-grade data connection that provides internet connectivity, again, for our city's infrastructure. The city's existing agreement with Suddenlink to provide these services is due to expire soon, and so proposals were accepted to review our options to move forward. So there's a lot of information in these proposals that we received. I'm going to do my best to review this information with you and summarize it as best I can without hopefully putting you to sleep and proceeding quickly. The following is a summary of the dedicated internet monthly pricing for 1 gigabit fiber service per the proposals. We had Arcadia IT Partners come in at $1,779.75 a month with an additional $14,595 in one-time fees. We had a company by the name of Granite come in at $1,205 a month, and Suddenlink come in at $1,850 per month. Additionally, the following is a summary of the Metro Ethernet monthly pricing for 1 gigabit service per site. Arcadia IT Partners came in at $2,195 per site with an undetermined fee for installation services. Suddenlink came in at $550 per site. After reviewing the many options included in all proposals, staff was able to bundle various coax, internet, and Metro Ethernet services with Suddenlink. The internet and Metro Ethernet services will be delivered to the city via fiber optic cabling. Staff evaluated the infrastructure of our network to determine the type of connectivity necessary on a site-by-site basis to reduce cost. The speed and method of data delivery for each service will vary dependent on the network bandwidth needs and again on the service delivery cost. With this methodology in mind, staff was able to negotiate with Suddenlink to bundle the various services for all sites into a single agreement. The total monthly cost for services will be $9,675.57 with no additional configuration or setup fees. This agreement is a 3-year contract with 2 optional 1-year renewals. The annual not to exceed amount of the contract is $112,518.72. Funds are in the proposed 21 budget. Staff recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5935. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Any Aldermen? Yep.
So Chad, the infrastructure connecting all of these facilities that we have, are they using existing, or did we have something to do with laying that fiber?
So I would say 99% of our infrastructure is leased fiber. I'd love one day to have the capital funds necessary to change that, but we lease everything except for what is connected to our convention center. And then when we put that fiber, and we bored that in a few years back, we also have some that was during the downtown project. And so we have some that we have some that goes that way as well.
So basically, if we chose one of these other vendors, they basically could just jump on that? No. They would have to redo infrastructure?
I can't speak. Data communications can get tricky. It would vary, and it would depend on whether Suddenlink would allow them to.
Right.
And so in this case, they're wanting our business, and I venture to say they wouldn't be willing to sublet that fiber to another company. Although, for example, Granite, for example, in their proposal, they were going to sublet with CenturyLink's fiber, and there's advantages and disadvantages to doing that. But from our perspective, if you're getting this service from a subletted provider and there's an issue, you actually have two different layers to deal with. Right.
Yeah.
So it's advantageous for us to use a single vendor, in this case Suddenlink. We've been with them for a number of years.
Right.
This service is completely different than the service they would provide, for example, to your home or something like that.
Right.
This is commercial grade quality service.
I hope so, because there's a lot of unhappy people with Suddenlink.
I've heard that recently.
Yes. Okay, that's it.
Any other questions for Chad?
Chad, I know we're dealing with the commercial contract for the city on this, but there is an awful lot of unhappy people in Branson with Suddenlink. And ever since Altice bought them, it just seemed like the service just went straight downhill. And it's so frustrating because there's literally no competition, right? They're the only game in town unless you go with Dish or something else. And I know these are two different animals we're talking about, but while we're negotiating with Suddenlink, and you probably don't know this, Suddenlink, I understand that Granite would have to sublease lines from Suddenlink if we went with a different company. Is that the same within the city for all the residents and businesses in the city that have Suddenlink problems? Would that be the same issue as if we went with a different carrier? Maybe this is a Chris question. Does the city have a contract with Suddenlink that they're the only provider for internet service?
No.
So you want to take that?
Rock, paper, scissors, Judge.
To my knowledge, no. I mean, no, there is no contract that says that exists within the city.
Don't they?
To my knowledge.
Bid on it through the state?
So it depends on what it is.
For the rights to service it?
Yeah.
Free market.
Well, once again, I think you got a difference between like commercial grade and residence. Unfortunately, yes, it's the same company, but it's the difference between commercial grade and residential.
And I think I get your point, Alderman Milton, and you and I have talked about this offline before.
I jumped in when he was here talking to Chad, the business guy. Chad can tell you.
Yeah, we have communicated, Stan had asked me in the past to communicate with them and John, and they're aware. I can't say, when I say they, I mean Altice. It's my understanding, again, this is off the cuff, but someone that's an executive there is aware of our concerns that has been expressed to me. And again, I want to be very clear, that's a whole separate issue than what we're talking about tonight. I have a whole separate NOC or Network Operations Center that I call when I have issues that nobody else has a number to that's just for our service. And they monitor it 24/7, 365. Our uptime well exceeds 99.5% since we've ever had this service. It just, it's good.
Okay.
We're just venting.
But I hear your concerns. I echo those from other people in the community. Unfortunately, this is a separate issue, but I hear you.
Thank you.
The government organization that has jurisdiction over broadband is the Federal Communications Commission. If you want to just Google that, go to their website. They have a complaint portal for any type of violations with regards to quality of service, type of service, yada, yada. It's not something that a municipality such as the city of Branson has been given authority over. This is all handled at the federal level. So that's the main agency that is responsible for the delivery of broadband in the United States. If there's a deceptive practice, a advertising issue, things like that, that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Federal Trade Commission and potentially the Attorney General's Office for Missouri for consumer protection. But generally, if it's a service-related issue, it's an FCC issue. There's a whole website on the Federal Communication Commission's portal that discusses how to file a complaint, where to file a complaint. And again, I think it comes down to where there's smoke, there's fire. So if a lot of people are having issues, a lot of people complain, sooner or later that's going to wake them up that maybe they need to take a look at it.
Thank you.
We do have a franchise with them, do we not, that comes up every 5 years or so? It's not an exclusive franchise, but it's still a franchise, isn't it?
Yeah. We do to some level, and that factors into it as well. But bottom line is, even with that, FCC controls quality of service.
Well, on individual services, there is tremendous just total discomfort. And if you've ever tried to call them, you would understand that. And it appears to be deliberate. It's to get out of the service. Sooner or later, you just give up. But I think we've got another opportunity to discuss it. I think we'll probably get some public input at that time, I would think, when that franchise comes up. So whether or not we can do anything through that, I don't know, but we could at least air it. Yeah. Okay, any other comments on this contract? Okay, please vote. So to the vote is 6 yes, 0 no. Bill passes unanimously. Item 24. Madam Clerk, would you introduce that item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5936, an ordinance approving a contract with ThinkSpace IT pertaining to the purchase of Microsoft software licensing and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay. We'll begin with a staff report from Chad again.
Members of the board, the following agreement is with ThinkSpace IT for the purchase of Microsoft software licensing required to service the city's various Office 365 communication needs. Licensing subscriptions being purchased includes quantity of 1 of Azure Active Directory, quantity of 10 of Office 365 audio conferencing, quantity of 315 of Office 365 G1, quantity of 20 of Office 365 G3 licensing, and then quantity of 1 Office 365 G5. The City of Branson's data in this agreement will be hosted in Microsoft's government cloud, which provides increased security, provided exclusively to qualified government entities. Our police department and sensitive data related to their connections to the FBI and other things require us to be housed in those facilities. Bids were accepted, and ThinkSpace IT was the lowest qualified bidder. We did have another bidder, SHI, which submitted a bid which initially appeared to be lowest. However, after reaching out to the vendor, we had discussions about their bid, and they clarified that their lowest pricing option required a 3-year commitment and a licensing structure change, which was outside the scope of what we bid in this. The total not to exceed amount for the agreement with ThinkSpace IT is up to $35,000 annually. This allows staff to add licensing as needed for employee fluctuations. The total amount that we need, or the minimum amount, I should say, is $30,850.91. Funds are included in the 21 budget appropriations. Staff recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5936. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this bill? Any aldermen?
Yes, sir. I just want to go back over that, Chad. I want to make sure I've got this right. This action allows staff to be added as needed. So explain that. Do they just fix that at a dollar amount? And you can play with whatever you want to up to that level?
Essentially, what you're approving here is the licensing that we need is the quantities that I read, right? And so we have certain things that come up. For example, Office 365 G1 only includes Office web apps. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, those are in the web. Functional, but are in the web, and there's advantages and disadvantages to that. We have what I would call, quote unquote, power users. Some of those require what's called a G3 license, and those are where the localized versions of those software platforms are allowed in that licensing. And so if we have any that pop up that need that we've overlooked, or their needs change, we need to be able to add that licensing to their account.
Okay.
And it is substantially more expensive. Additionally, we use Microsoft Teams heavily, especially after COVID hit around here. We do Teams meetings absolutely every day, all day long. And in order to do audio conferencing, there's a small license change on there as well. And so recently we've had more and more users that need that. And so it gives us about $4,000 in flexibility annually to be able to add those licenses as needed. I don't anticipate we're going to need 35, but it lets us have that flexibility at your option.
I can see why Mr. Gates is the second richest man in the world now.
It's not cheap.
Any other questions?
I got a quick one. So what could this vendor do to screw up? I mean.
To screw up?
Yeah.
Lose a
if they
contract?
done performing or.
Microsoft is a
I should have said, what
funny.
mistakes could they make?
Microsoft's a funny company in that essentially they're a reseller of Microsoft's services, and Microsoft,
Gotcha.
for corporations or government entities, much prefers you to go through a reseller, although you don't have to. Generally, there's actually a price break if you do go through a reseller instead of going directly to Microsoft. How they have that logic is beyond me. I have no idea why it's that way.
I got you.
And so really, the only thing they can do to screw up is mess with our licensing on Microsoft side, or not be responsive in the event we need to add or remove licensing. If they drag their feet, or that they aren't cooperative in that way,
Right.
then we would go back to them and say, hey, look,
So they're buying in bulk so they can.
Right.
Keep the cost down. So is this a 120-day out, or is there anything like that?
I'd have to defer. It's a standard services or a goods contract.
I saw something about here, 120.
It's one of our standard agreements. So I don't know what's in those, Chris. Thinking it's 60. We'd have
Either
to-
way?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, please vote. Vote is 6 yes, 0 no. Bill passes unanimously, 6-0. Item number 25. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5937, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Newman Signs Incorporated pertaining to the purchase of signage supplies, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Okay. Begin with a report from Keith Francis.
Members of the board, this is our yearly sign contract for our sign-making materials. We received 9 bids on October 13th, 2020. Sign-making supplies include pre-printed signs, blanks, and the city added lettering as needed, signposts, delineators, cones, barricades. Compared the line items by line item reviewed for the lowest bid. Contracts are written with each vendor for the line items having the lowest bid and approved by the Board of Aldermen. The cumulative amount exceeds when the cumulative, I'll get it out here in a minute, exceeds $15,000. Staff recommends bids with Newman Signs, Inc. for the purchase of the items, and the low bidder for a total amount not to exceed $17,600. The bid items meet city specifications and are within budget. Funds to cover these expenses are included in the proposed 2021 transportation budget. Staff recommends approval. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5937. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Any aldermen?
Yes, sir. We have experience dealing with Newman Signs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I thought. And there's been no problems with it so far?
No.
Any other questions? Okay. Please vote. Vote is 6 yes, 0 no. Bill passes unanimously. Item number 26. Madam Clerk, would you provide the introduction for this matter?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5938, an ordinance approving the second renewal of the services contract with Trade B Environmental Services LLC pertaining to the transportation disposal of household hazardous waste material, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
We'll begin with another report from Keith Francis.
Members of the board, this is for a household hazardous waste contract for the contractor to come and pick it up at our recycle center. One bid was received on October 17th of 18 for household hazardous waste collection. The bid included an option to renew for up to 3 additional successive one-year terms. Review and approval by the board is required prior to entering a renewal of the contract. The services contract was approved by the Board of Aldermen on January 8th, 2019 for a not to exceed amount of $22,837.41 for the fiscal year 2019. First renewal was approved by the board on November 12th, 2019, not to exceed amount of $12,000 for 2020. This is the second of the 3 renewals allowed in the original request for bid. Staff recommends the option for the second renewal of Tredebi Environmental Services LLC for the transportation and disposal of the household hazardous waste material in the amount not to exceed $12,000 for the fiscal year 2021. Staff recommends approval. We're glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5938. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this item? Any aldermen?
Just real quick, defining household hazardous waste and how it is delivered to the recycling center. Sorry for the stumbling.
That's okay. That's everything from paint, old paint you want to dispose of there, oil, gasoline, antifreeze, things like that you want to drop off there. Household cleaners, Ajax that's went bad or whatever, just anything that's household cleaning chemicals that's old and people cleaning out their basement or something.
So citizens listening tonight and they have 5 gallons of paint they want to get rid of,
Sure.
Do they drop it off at the recycling center? Is there a fee attached to that?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question with how's this affect with the county taking over the recycle center? Is this something they should be doing, or as far as this contract?
Well, technically, theoretically, however you want to put it, the county has not taken it over yet.
Okay.
They are still putting together their contract, and their attorney is supposed to be contacting Chris Quebec tomorrow. Keyword being supposed to.
Any other questions? Please vote. Result of the vote is 6 yes, 0 no. Bill passes unanimously.
Mr. President, we used to just take the old recycled oil to the people that are doing concrete work, and that's what they'd spray their forms down with to keep them from sticking. I guess times have changed.
I make no comment.
Yeah.
Item number 27 is appointments. Okay. The appointment process is in accordance with the board and committee appointment procedure. I will now announce the mayor's appointments for Category 4. The Branson Housing Authority Board, these are appointments made by the mayor and not approved by the Board of Aldermen. Branson Housing Authority Board, the appointment is Doug Baker, appointing the Branson Housing Authority Board to fill the unexpired term of Don Baker until September of 2022. And the mayor wants to thank Doug Baker for his willingness to serve. And now we're down to reports. Alderman King.
No report this evening, President.
Okay. Alderman White.
I just want to take this opportunity to know that 2020 has been a rough year, but we still have a Thanksgiving holiday coming up, and there's still a few things to be thankful for. So I just want everybody to have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Alderman Skanes.
Just a happy Thanksgiving and very safe time. that you have with your loved ones. Be safe.
Alderman Milton?
I'd like to formally announce that I will be running for reelection for my Ward 2 seat coming April.
Wonderful. Alderman C?
No report. Thank you.
Okay. Administrator Dobbins?
He brought a book with him. Watch out.
I'm coming. I would like to report I will never run for election of anything, regardless of what time or day it is. The study session for the December 17th has been canceled for your all's edification. Also, for edification for all of you, the crane will be removed from 76 tomorrow between 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.
There you go,
So
Jimmy.
traffic lanes will be opened back up. And last but not least, there is a tree lighting ceremony at Liberty Plaza at 5:30 on Friday that you all are invited to attend. The public is invited. And happy Thanksgiving. God bless each of you for what you do.
Even me?
Thank you. And Mayor Akers, of course, is not here, so he can't make his report. So I would just like to thank all of you on the board and in the audience for putting up with me for the entire 2.5 hours here. I appreciate the practice. And I'll move on from there. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Aldermen's meeting?
So moved.
Second and third.
Call for a vote. 6 yes, 0 no. The adjourn time is whatever Lisa says it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.